Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lesson 25. In this lesson, we cover comparatives and superlatives. So, what are comparatives and superlatives? They're basically just a fancy way of saying more of some adjective or most of some adjective. So, for example, more beautiful or the most intelligent. So, more is the comparative form, most is the superlative form in English, but in Arabic, they actually have the same form. In both cases, they look like af'alu. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I mean is, let's say you have some adjective like kareem. Okay, the root letters of kareem are kaf, ra, and mim. So in order to, and kareem means generous. So in order to turn this into more generous or most generous, I simply put a alif with a hamza at the beginning with a fatha, and then read the word like akramu. So kareem, generous, akramu, more generous or most generous. Similarly, hasanun, which can mean beautiful or excellent, becomes ahsanu, ahsanu, more beautiful, more intelligent. Safilun, asfalu. So in all of these cases, you just take the three root letters and you put it into this form here, af'alu. Okay? Now if the last two root letters are the same, like in this case, sheen, dal, dal, then you actually contract them together and put a shadda on it. So instead of becoming ashdadu, it becomes ashaddu. Azizun becomes a'azzu. Qalilun becomes aqallu. So in each of these cases, shadidun, more severe, more intense. Azizun, more honored. Aqallu, more little or fewer. Okay. And finally, if the last letter is a waw or a ya, which sometimes happens, for example, zakiyun, which means intelligent, then you actually put a alif maqsura, or this ya without the two dots, at the very end, and you read this like an alif. So zakiyun becomes azka, intelligent, more intelligent, or most intelligent. Okay, so this is how you actually form the word, but how do you use it inside an entire sentence? Well, let's try to say the phrase more than. Okay, so we know how we're going to say more, or the adjective with more. We're going to use the af'alu form. To say than, you use the word min. Okay, min. So we've already seen one use of min before, which means from, but in this case, min can also mean than in this comparative or superlative form. So let's see a couple of examples of that. إثمهما أكثر من نفعهما. So what is the superlative or comparative form here? In this case, it's the word aktharu, and it's comparative. So we're talking about more. Aktharu min. So it's more than. So what is the whole sentence saying? Ithmuhuma, their sin. So they're talking about two objects, the dual form. Their sin is more than their benefit. Another example here is asghara min dhalika. Smaller than that. Now what this shows you here is that the ending vowel can actually change here. So notice that it's not asgharu, but it's actually asghara. And that is actually because the word ending should actually agree with the subject. So this comparative form, its ending should actually agree with the case ending of the subject. So we don't actually see the subject here, but it must have been in the mansub case because asghara is also in the mansub case. Alright, now there's two special words I should tell you. One of them is better, and the other is worse. Okay, so even in English, we don't say more good or more bad. We have these very particular words we use, better and worse. Similarly, in Arabic, we say khair to mean better, and shar to mean worse. So for example, Allahu khayrun wa abqa. God is better and more enduring. This is also a comparative form. Here we have huwa sharrul lahum. It is worse for them. Okay, shar is worse. Now let's shift gears, going from comparative to superlative. Now we want to say he's the most something, or she's the most something. So there's two ways to do this in Arabic. The first is to use the possession construction. So the idea here is that you take your word, let's say we want to say finest form. The word for finest is ahsan. Ahsan. We take hasan and we just make it ahsan. Now, form is taqweem, so we can make ahsan a possessed and taqweem a possessor. And so you'll see here, ahsan doesn't have an al, it doesn't have a tanween. Taqweem is a possessor, so it has a double kasra. It's in the majroor case. If you see this construction, then this means the most of that. So fi ahsani taqweem, in the most fine form or in the finest form. Or here, aktharu an-nasi, most of the people. Now it's worth pointing out that the possessor here could be indefinite like taqweem, or it could be definite like an-nas. And typically if it's indefinite, you have to use the singular form of the word, and if it's definite, you have to use a plural form. That's something to keep in mind. Finally, there's a very different way to say most, and that is you just take the af'al and you make it definite. So you put an al at the beginning. And then you use it like a typical adjective, so it just appears right after the noun. So for example, al-adhabul akbar, the greatest punishment. Okay, now this akbar is the greatest. And the reason it's greatest is because it's the definite version, and it's acting like an adjective to al-adhab. And notice if you do this, then the noun and the adjective have to agree in all four of the criteria that we've talked about before. Okay, so the best way to practice this, of course, is by looking at examples in the Quran. So let's take a look at this first one here. Ajrul akhirati akbar. Ajrul akhirati akbar. So the reward of the akhirah, the reward of the hereafter. This is a possession construction. The reward of the hereafter is greater. Is greater. Okay, notice I have to translate this as greater because it's not a possession construction, it's not an al, so this is a comparative form. So this ayah might continue, it might say what is greater than, or it might leave it open-ended. هي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. هي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. Okay, so it, here can mean she or it. In this case, it's probably it. It is like a stone. كالحجارة, like a stone, or more severe. أو أشد, or more severe in hardness. نحن أقرب إليه منكم. We are closer to him than you all. Than you all. Now notice how min is being used as than here. Okay? And kum is just the pronoun suffix. We are closer to him than you all. له الأسماء الحسنى. To him belong the most beautiful names. Okay. To him belong the most beautiful names. Now here we actually notice something interesting. This is also a comparative form. This is the superlative form, al-husna, and we see it being used as an adjective. Now in this case, the feminine form is used, not al-ahsan, but al-husna. And the feminine form is appropriate here because asma is a plural, it's a broken plural. Exactly. So it's a broken plural, asma, and it ends with a hamza as well. So it's feminine in nature. So here we see that a feminine form of the superlative is used. All right. So go ahead and do a few more examples here, and really practice what we've learned here with comparative and superlative. And these forms appear throughout the Quran, so it's very important to know that the grammatical rules for comparatives and superlatives. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.